everybody, welcome to the Amex Stadium live coverage of Brighton against Nottingham Forest here on 5 Live Sports Extra 2. My name is Chris Wise. Luke Chambers, a former EFL stalwart of many years alongside me for an afternoon of high drama potentially, Luke. Lots of lovely storylines involved, bit of pressure still on Brighton down at the bottom, albeit slightly relieved with that win at Brentford last week. And for Nottingham Forest, onto their fourth permanent manager of this Premier League season, and Vitor Pereira looking for his first Premier League points. Good to see you.
Yeah, amazing to be here. Like you say, so many storylines surrounding this current fixture, and with results yesterday, especially at the bottom end of the table, Nottingham Forest especially will really need to approach this game hoping to take all 3 points, because certainly that is exactly what they need.
So the players are just preparing to come out from the tunnel way down beneath us. We are high up in the west stand in our commentary position, and 10 giant flags, blue and white, and the pride colours, all with the Brighton and Hove Albion club logo on, are being slowly waved in time with the music as we wait for the players to emerge from the tunnel. And I'll give you the teams in just a moment, but we have already seen a presentation here on the pitch pre-match for James Milner, who of course last weekend in that win for Brighton at Brentford made his 654th Premier League appearance, so he is now the outright all-time Premier League appearance maker. And the CEO of the Premier League, Richard Masters, and the PFA CEO, Maheta Molango, were out there to give James Milner his award on a massive piece of tarpaulin with the name Milner, which was made to look like the back of a shirt, and all the different colours of the clubs that he played for as well. It was a great sight. Absolutely incredible. What an achievement. And you can't downplay it. It's what a career he's had, and it almost mirrored my entire playing career as well. We started at the same time. I'm 40 now, he's 40, and to witness what he's been able to achieve, not just across football, he's amassed over 900 games, but in the Premier League, to be the outright leading appearance maker is an absolute phenomenal achievement that I'm not sure we'll see again. And quite the scene here as the players come out of the tunnel, because we've just had the smoke set up from the various systems, all splashing out different colours to make it look like the rainbow, the pride colours are in the air inside the Amex Stadium as the two teams emerge, Brighton and Hove Albion and Nottingham Forest. Brighton 14th in the Premier League, 34 points, 9 points above the relegation zone, and below them, and only 2 points above the bottom three, Nottingham Forest. And they saw West Ham and Leeds, two of their possible direct rivals in terms of keeping themselves in the division, both lose yesterday. So this is a chance for one of your former clubs, Luke, to make up some ground. Absolutely, and these are the chances you have to try and take, because at this moment in time in the season, they don't come around often. Both of those sides, like you say, losing. And I watched them away at Brentford a few weeks ago, and they were different class, and they managed to get a fantastic result there. Watched them again in Europe, look like a totally different side in that competition. But now this is really, I mean, for me, looking at their team, as you're going to go on to, this is their strongest possible 11, barring potentially Chris Wood, that is available to Nottingham Forest as a football club. Well, as we're talking about Forest, let's deal with them first. So it is one change from the rather harsh defeat at home to Liverpool a week ago, where they had so many chances, but such has been the story of Forest season, they weren't able to take any of them. And the one change is in goal. Matt Sells returns to the team, having missed the last 3 Premier League matches with a groin problem. So Stefan Ortega, who had been in goal, not in the Forest squad today. So Sells in goal, and then Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo and Williams in defence. Sangare and Anderson, the two midfielders. Hutchinson, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi and Jesus leading the line. There were 6 changes from Vitor Pereira in that game against Fenerbahce in the Europa League during the week, but obviously he made 4 alterations at half-time. Such was his concern about the direction of travel in that match. Forest were 1-0 down, and then shortly after half-time 2-0 down, so maybe not too much of a surprise to see him going back to his early tried and tested. Yeah, definitely, and I think that tie was pretty much won inside that first leg. But the thing for me today, and with Brighton being probably not having the season that everyone would have expected, they've been absolutely phenomenal since they arrived and kept their Premier League status over a long period of time now. But for Forest today, if they have to go and win this game, it will leave gaps where the front three that Brighton can
really get out the traps today, and Matoma, Welbeck and Gomez is going to be really, really difficult to stop if they do leave too many spaces for them.
I mentioned to somebody downstairs when the team news, the Brighton team came out, and I said, how often previously has Fabian Hürzeler named an unchanged team as he does today? Twice is the answer. Twice since he's come in. This is only the second time that he's picked the same 11 from the previous week in the Premier League.
Well, and that's obviously going to be part of his preparation, but also his injuries as well. But that just tells its own story, that this Brighton side, and as a club, they are looking for that consistency in performance, in player selection, and in whether they're picking 3 points up week in, week out, which they've been used to doing. But they've certainly got enough in their side today to really challenge and potentially put Forest even to a deeper hole than they're already in.
So we're set to go. That Brighton unchanged team: for Bruggen in goal, Vifa, Van Hecke, Dunk and Kadiolu in defence, Milner, Hinshelwood and Gross in midfield, Gomez and Mitoma the wide players, Danny Welbeck, Brighton's leading scorer, up front. And it's Forest who get us underway in the red shirts with the white shorts and the red socks, going from right to left, the visitors in this first half, and they're the ones who immediately have got possession inside Brighton's half. Though the home team have taken it back in the blue and white, blue shorts and the blue socks of Brighton, going to from left to right as we view it, as Elliot Anderson, what a great season he's having for Forest, collects it in midfield, gives it to Gibbs White, 5 yards outside the box, to the left hand side for Hudson-Odoi. Hudson-Odoi just creeping into the Brighton penalty area, support coming from Williams, his cross is high up towards that far post, and with the presence of Hutchinson, is headed behind by Kadiolu, and Nottingham Forest have got a corner inside 40 seconds.
Yeah, fantastic start for Nottingham Forest, and again it comes from the man you mentioned, their talisman, their best players by far and away this season, Elliot Anderson, winning that midfield battle, drops into Gibbs White, delivers it out wide, and Hudson-Odoi is waiting for the overlap, and then it's cleared away by Brighton.
There's 3 Forest players all around for Bruggen. Both of the centre halves are there. It's a short one. It's back to Hutchinson, who took the corner, drives it low, and Verbruggen takes it in his grasp, low down inside his 6-yard box with good strong hands from the Brighton keeper.
Yeah, and it's always one, do you really test that? Do you put that first initial ball right on top of Verbruggen and ask Brighton questions with that chance early on? But Forest opted for that short corner and just came to nothing, with Hutchinson's strike not having any power across goal.
It was 1 win in 13 for Brighton in the Premier League until that victory at Brentford last week. And I'm not saying that this game isn't significant, Luke, but the pressure cooker that Brighton would have felt today, had they not won that game at Brentford last week, would have been immense.
Absolutely, and we haven't spoken about Brighton being anywhere near threatened by the relegation, but like you say, winning that game at that time has relieved a lot of pressure. But again, today, if Forest take points off them, if they do come away with the 3, Brighton again, this season isn't over yet, and there's a long way to go. So if they don't start to put that real run together that we've been used to seeing from them, it's going to be a difficult end to the season.
Good win by Jesus on the halfway line, leapt high, flicked it on for Hudson-Odoi, and after a short delay, the referee determining that he didn't like that initial jump by Igor Jesus, who has got the short sleeve shirt on and the gloves, and those arms with the gloves on are outstretched either side of him to say, why have you penalised me there? Well,
he's certainly a physical presence up there, and I think that's what Forest have missed this season when he hasn't been available. He challenges for all the goal kicks, the free kicks, especially coming from Sells, and he's just probably led a little bit with his forearm on Vifa at fullback, just in front of our position on the halfway line, but the referees decided that it was too much force going in early doors, but certainly a marker laid down.
Luke Chambers with us here on 5 Live Sports Extra. 0-0 between Brighton and Forest in these first few minutes. Here's Matoma shooting low. That's Brighton's first shot on goal, and much like the one up the other end from Verbruggen, Sells collects it down low.
Yeah, Matoma picks it up brilliantly. He plays it into Hinshelwood, who reverses it back to him just outside the D, to the left of it, on the edge of Forest's area, and he just can't quite connect it. He looked like he was going to try and bend it round Milenkovic into that far corner of Sells' goal, but couldn't quite get the connection. Just over 3 minutes played, 0-0 here, and as it is in the 2 other games in the Premier League that got underway at 2 o'clock, Manchester United against Crystal Palace, which is live on 5 Live, Fulham Spurs on Sports Extra for you. You can listen to all 3 of the games via BBC Sounds, as you will be able to Arsenal against Chelsea a little later on, which is our offering on 5 Live 2 from 4:30. Forest have got a man down here. It is Callum Hudson-Odoi, who is just slowly getting back to his feet in preparation for this Forest free kick that he's won just inside
their own half on the near left.
Yeah, just in front of Nottingham Forest dugout. Hudson-Odoi just got there ahead of Hinshelwood, who slid in sort of from 3 or 4 yards away, potentially nicked the ball, but also just followed through onto Callum Hudson-Odoi's ankle. But thankfully for Nottingham Forest, he's up, back on his feet, and Forest have possession.
And they have it with Nikola Milenkovic, their tall Serbian defender, who goes back to goalkeeper Sells, short into the feet of Anderson, who put it slightly astray of Milenkovic, had to go chasing after it into that right-back area, and his attempted ball downfield is blocked by Milner and ricochets out of play for a Forest goal kick.
And we speak about the standards and the adulation that James Milner has received this week. He's ran from central midfield, pressured Elliot Anderson on the edge of his own 18-yard box. He's then continued to pressure the ball on Milenkovic by the corner flag and has blocked the ball out for a Forest goal kick. And if that doesn't tell you that there's plenty more left in James Milner, I don't know what does.
And actually, another landmark. We were talking about the fact that it's Premier League appearance 655 for him today, but it's also his 900th club career appearance today too. He just continues to reach those milestones, Milner.
And you broke my heart before the game, Chris, when you said that he was on that number, and I thought he's 20 ahead of me now, so I was a little bit gutted after that. But no, what a servant to the game. He's been fantastic.
And how many of those 800 odd were for Nottingham Forest, remind me?
250 odd.
Yeah.
Long time, lovely period there.
Yeah, great affinity with the club. Luke Chambers with us today here on 5 Live Sports Extra 2, 0-0. We've played 5.5 minutes at the Amex. Mistake by Williams on the edge of his penalty area. Gomez takes it off him for Brighton, gives it to Welbeck. Milenkovic with the challenge on Welbeck. It was an important one for Forest. It's come back to Gomez. Great hit! Oh, what a finish! Diego Gomez on the half volley, lashes it across Sells and into his bottom right-hand corner. And no wonder he's running around not knowing where to go with the celebration. That is a goal of great wonder from Diego Gomez. 6 minutes in, a spark of brilliance from the Paraguayan. Brighton 1, Nottingham Forest 0.
And it's absolutely out of nowhere, and this whole stadium is absolutely stunned because he's attempted a half volley sort of sidewind across it to the far post from the corner of Nottingham Forest 18-yard box near this right-hand side. Out of nowhere, Forest don't clear the ball, and it's all very, very frantic. Gross keeps it alive, and the audacity to strike that ball just 5 yards inside Forest box, but on the actual byline across Sells, he's got absolutely no chance. It takes a zip off the surface with the sweetness that he's hit it, and it drives itself after hitting Sells' right arm. It's just not strong enough to keep it out. What a start for Brighton.
So 6 minutes on his return to the Nottingham Forest team. Matt Sells is beaten, and Brighton, who have laboured at times here at the Amex in recent months, and much to the frustration of some supporters as well, perhaps haven't been as creative as we know they can be. They're 1-0 up against Nottingham Forest through a super Gomez goal. So what have Forest got in response? Because immediately they're on the front foot with Hudson-Odoi. Now Nico Williams, who is 15 yards outside the Brighton area, back to Hudson-Odoi again, and then Anderson chips it in, and it's headed away with strength from Lewis Dunk. Back into the feet of Murillo, out to this left-hand side again for Hudson-Odoi, who comes inside FIFA, running across the edge of the area, tries to slip it in for Williams, and covering is Van Hecker, who loops it out of play for a throw to Forest on this left-hand side. Brighton 1, Forest 0, 8 minutes played. Yeah,
good response from Forest, immediately going back up the other end, gaining possession, driving through the heart of Brighton again with Elliot Anderson. Just can't quite get that delivery right, and again Lewis Dunk, like he has done for so long for Brighton, commanding in that 6-yard area with a header away.
And now Brighton with the ball on the halfway line, and with their goal scorer Gomez, who's now seen a pass, drifting it over the top. Mitoma's going to leave it, Kadiolu's coming onto it, left side of Forest penalty area. His pull back is lifted up towards Welbeck. Welbeck's still in there, he nearly flicked it in with his heel. Had to get inventive there, Danny Welbeck, didn't make the initial contact with it. Then with his back to goal, flicked his heel towards the ball, and it didn't have the power or quite the direction to get past Sells.
No, lovely break again from Brighton. Diego Gomez picked it up on the halfway line, just delivered a 70-yard crossfield pass that Kadioglu got himself on, delivers it back to Gross, who then delivers a left foot cross, real considered, but can't take the opportunity with the second phase.
This is a brilliant game so far. It is end-to-end. Forest on the attack again down the left, though. Hudson-Odoi is stopped in his tracks. Brighton 1, Nottingham Forest 0 for the second week running in the Premier League. Diego Gomez with Brighton's opening goal, just as he did last weekend in that 2-0 win at Brentford.
Yeah, brilliant start to the game, and I had to cut myself off there because it looked like Forest again were going to create another chance.
As they might do here, because Igor Jesus is 5 yards outside the box, outside of his right boot. It's a perfect ball to the right side of the penalty area where Hutchinson's got it, tees it up for Sangare. His layoff is to Ola Aina, who rolls the ball underneath his boot. The Forest right back, who's missed such a large chunk of this season because of injury, the Nigerian. And back to Milinkovic again, almost back on the halfway line as Forest try and restart once more. Aina coming in from the right wing, giving it to Sangare, and back out to the right again. Jesus waiting for the cross in the middle, but it's not going to come to him because it is taking a deflection from that Gibbs-White delivery, and Forest have got another corner.
Yeah, credit to Forest. They've come back into the game very well straight away after conceding what a brilliant goal, but just watching Morgan Gibbs-White closely, just drifting out of that number 10 position where he's probably spent too much time throughout the season. Just out further to the right, gets himself some space and time, and Brighton block it out for another Forest corner.
And a little bit of hush inside the Amex after the frantic start. Brighton fans may be fearing what might be coming from Forest. Hutchinson with the cross, Murillo beaten to it by Van Hecker, who heads it away at the near post for Brighton. And now they've got a free kick for a foul on Kadiolu just outside Brighton's own penalty area, just beyond the 10-minute mark. Brighton 1, Nottingham Forest 0.
I think it's just going to be really intriguing now, especially these next 10 minutes. What do Brighton do? They really responded with that ball over the top and nearly creating that chance to go 2-0 up. But do they now sit off? Do they bank in? Do they allow Forest to have possession? But if they then go for the sort of second goal against Forest, it's going to be a real difficult afternoon.
Kadiolu, switch of play from the left back to high on the right side, but Diego Gomez took his eye off the ball as it was coming towards him, and Nico Williams with the interception, though his clearance has only gone as far as Vifa, and then Vifa is barged over by Elliot Anderson on this right wing, so a few yards in from the touchline. Brighton free kick, and Milner's taking it quickly. He's given it to Gomez, and Gomez, rather unfortunately, has driven it right at his own man there, and it's gone away for a goal kick.
Yeah, the two sides of Gomez there. One piece of brilliance, the next one he's tried to deliver a cross, under-hit it, just inside Forest's 18-yard box, heading towards the penalty spot, and then cannons off Gross, who just wanted a little easy pass because he found a nice little space there. But Forest certainly have to make sure they defend these areas a lot better.
What they haven't done is deal with that situation particularly well. They've given the ball back to Brighton, though Gomez can't hang on to it, so Forest will have a throw in there. Left back area. It's a bit of a shame, Luke, I have to say, that this game has had a chaotic start before I got the stat out about the complete chaos that these two tend to produce when they play each other. So get this, prior to today, their last 6 Premier League meetings between Brighton and Forest, 23 goals, 6 penalties, 3 own goals, 2 red cards and 4 goals from the 88th minute onwards.
Well, that would have been nice to know, wouldn't it, before we kicked off, but it's certainly living up to it at the moment. End-to-end stuff. It's not two sides just sitting in, accepting, listen, we're 1-0, we're 1-0 up, we're going to allow Forest to have the ball. They're pressing high, Brighton, they're playing with real intent, and they're squeezing high with Duncan, Van Hecker at that back four, really trying to put the pressure on Forest to take a risk to try and get back into the game, when then Brighton are then set to hit them on the counter-attack.
They are the team, Nottingham Forest, who are just above the Premier League bottom 3 at the start of this Sunday, but they're 1-0 down here to Brighton, but they're on the attack down the left with Jesus, the dummy from Hudson-Odoi, 10 yards outside the box. Gibbs-White shoots, and he scores a brilliant goal! Morgan Gibbs-White! Well, we've had quality at one end from Diego Gomez, and that's another cracker, and it's from Morgan Gibbs-White for Nottingham Forest. 2 goals in 13 minutes. A brilliant response from the visitors. Gibbs-White with Vitor Pereira's first Premier League goal as Nottingham Forest manager, and it's an unforgettable one. Brighton 1, Forest 1.
The goal from start to finish is absolute quality. The ball down the line for Murillo, right in front of both dugouts. It's left by Igor Jesus. It's then left again for Igor Jesus to spin, get on the end of it from Callum Hudson-Odoi, who steps over it, delivers a ball into that number 10 position I mentioned for Morgan Gibbs-White. He's found himself 4 or 5 yards of space just outside the D. He controls it, it pops up, and he hits the sweetest half volley into the top right hand corner. It's an absolute fantastic goal and a brilliant response from Nottingham Forest.
It's just the way, Luke, that when he gets it out of his feet, the moment he hits it, it's persistently moving away from Verbruggen to his left.
It's exactly that, and he takes his touch, and then he just has that extra time to look at Verbruggen's position, and he strikes across the ball with his right foot and his laces, and it just drifts off into that top corner. Absolutely no chance for Verbruggen, but what a fantastic finish from Morgan Gibbs-White.
Well, at least I got the stat out before Morgan Gibbs-White's goal about these two meeting each other.
Brilliant. What a fantastic start to the game. Both bits of quality, exactly what we want to be seeing. You see it so regularly in the Premier League.
So 1-1 between Brighton and Forest. Here's Matoma delivering from the left into the penalty area. Down it goes by Hinshelwood. Welbeck's there! And Brighton score! Danny Welbeck! Within a minute of Gibbs-White's goal, he's now got one for Brighton, and they're back in front. 10 Premier League goals for Danny Welbeck this season, and that parity for Forest did not last long.
And they must have thought, right, we're right back in this game, but what did Brighton do? They go exactly the same route down that left-hand side, deliver a long looping cross to the back post, and it doesn't look like Forest sensed any danger whatsoever. Hinshelwood has ghosted round the back post, but sort of 12 yards from the goal, and headed it down with Welbeck waiting, who cuts in front of Murillo and is able to have the presence of mind just to thigh it to his left, and he swivels on the half volley, smashes it across Sells from just outside the 6-yard box. It's a brilliant finish, another brilliant goal. Fantastic from Danny Welbeck. What a response, and what a game.
Oh my word, 3 goals inside the first 15 minutes at the Amex Stadium. Who knows what's coming next? Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1, and there have been goals in both the other Premier League games that got underway at 2 o'clock, by the way. Fulham are leading Spurs 1-0 at Craven Cottage. Harry Wilson with the goal. And it's Manchester United 0, Crystal Palace 1 at Old Trafford. Maxence Lecroix with the early goal for Oliver Glasner's team. But we've had 3 here, and it feels like we are certainly not done. Here is Gibbs-White keeping the ball in by the byline, right side, delivery into the Brighton penalty area, nodded away by Dunk, and then smashed upfield by Matoma.
And the difference in that attack for me is Forest committed bodies forward, but what Brighton did so well, which Forest didn't for that second goal, is get numbers back inside that 18-yard box. They're not doing it. They're just leaving the back 3, back 4 to deal with any problems. And Forest then are outnumbered, and they're able to create chances, whereas Brighton immediately, if Forest got in behind, lots of time near that corner flag for Morgan Gibbs-White, but they have 8 players inside their own defensive 18-yard box, and that is the reason why they're able to defend it and then keep possession.
Well, they haven't had entertainment quite like this at the Amex for some time. It's been a big criticism of Brighton. I mentioned only a few minutes ago that the struggles that they've had at the Amex this season. Brighton, you go back to December, they were 5th in the table, and then they were beaten here by Aston Villa, and they've slipped all the way down to 14th in the month since then.
Yeah, there's always been that positivity around Brighton. It just seems to be the first time this season where there's a little bit of negativity, not all singing off that same hymn sheet, and maybe that's the start. Today is the consistency in that starting 11, finding partnerships, finding relationships to build on and be positive, because that's certainly how Brighton have started.
Diego Gomez winning it high in Forest half on the right wing, centred across the edge of the penalty area. Matoma, Welbeck, back to Matoma, it's brilliant, and Sells spreads himself. What a good stop that is from the Nottingham Forest goalkeeper. He made the save, and it came back and hit Matoma and went behind for a goal kick. But the fluency of that Brighton move, this is them in their absolute pomp.
It is, and I mentioned relationships and partnerships, and Matoma picks up a real poor ball from Gomez, just 30 yards from goal, takes a great touch, and then reverses it into the D of Forest penalty area, into Welbeck's feet, continues his run. He then gives a one-touch layoff, and it's a perfect weighted pass into Matoma's space. He just takes one touch too many, which allows Sells to come out and close that gap and prevent it from going to 3-1 to Brighton.
It's just like a fine wine, Danny Welbeck, isn't he? 35 years old, 10 Premier League goals now, so that is level with his career best, which he actually did last season with Brighton. And obviously with so many games to play, you cannot help but feel that he's going to have his best ever goal-scoring season in this league.
I just really think he's found a way of playing that gets the best out of his attributes, which is, listen, he can run, he can cause problems, but at the moment he knows he's the focal point of the attacks. He stays inside the box, inside the width of the goal to create and score goals at the moment, and he knows Mitoma and Gomez, and you've got Gross and Hinshelwood to like to get forward in and around him, and that's the leading role that he's probably been looking for, that's just been allowed him to flourish, especially this season and last.
So if you are just joining us here on 5 Live Sports Extra 2, maybe you've come along, seen the flurry of goals and hoping for entertainment. Just to remind you of what's happened in this match, Brighton are leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1. We played 20 minutes. Diego Gomez after 6 for Brighton. Morgan Gibbs-White with a brilliant hit from outside the penalty area for 1-1 for Forest after 13. And then Danny Welbeck 2 minutes later putting Brighton back in front. So what is next? Here come Forest, left-hand side. Hudson-Odoi left-footed cross into the penalty area and clipped away by Mitoma on the half volley out to that far right side for a Forest throw.
And it's sort of back to my point then. Brilliant play from Forest, creating pressure on Brighton, but Callum Hudson-Odoi delivers across. There's 3 red shirts in the 18-yard box and there's 10 blue and white striped shirts. You're not going to be able to create and score goals if you don't commit more bodies forward.
Throwing one by Nico Williams on this near left-hand side, just inside Brighton's half. And the Welshman just having a look around to see what his options are. No win in their last 4 in the Premier League for Nottingham Forest. Their last victory January the 25th when they beat Brentford, which was also a Sunday afternoon. This one is not going their way at the moment. And Vitor Pereira down there with his big blue Nottingham Forest tracksuit top on and arms outstretched, trying to get some instructions over to his players as Vifa takes the throw from the halfway line for Brighton on the right, back to Van Hecke with the blonde hair and all the way back to goalkeeper Verbruggen.
Yeah, Brighton now just taking that sting out of the game, trying to develop some possession across their back 4. Milner now dropping out into that centre-back position just in front of his 18-yard box, picking the ball up and allowing Brighton just to have a little breather, slow the pace of the game down, because it's been absolutely electric since we started 20 minutes ago.
Here's Kadiolu, hair bobbing around as he plays it infield towards Van Hecke, the outside of his right boot up towards Mitoma, left-hand side on the halfway line for Brighton. He obviously missed that chance a moment ago. His goal contributions have dried up quite considerably recently, Kaoru Mitoma. Last 13 games in the Premier League, no goals, just 1 assist. He really could have done with that moment going his way.
Absolutely, and I think that just goes back to the point that Brighton have struggled a little bit this season because of someone like him who had such a big impact last season with those goals, assists and involvements, and just hasn't managed to hit those heights. And today, that chance, we would have used to see him burying that last season. 1 touch, 1 finish, goal. But just that little bit of hesitancy allowed him to have that extra touch, which really allowed Sells to close down that space to make that save.
Midway point of the first half that has been one of the best 22 minutes I can remember in the Premier League for a while. And here's Hinshelwood for Brighton. Kadiolu coming onto it. He's left it to the edge of the area for Gross. The sliding challenge from Sangare was well timed on the edge of that Nottingham Forest penalty area, and with those orange boots he collects the ball again. Sangare gives it to Gibbs-White inside the centre circle in his own half, outside of his boot to Hudson-Odoi. You've seen a lot of the ball actually in the first portion of this game for Forest off the left.
Yeah, and Vifa, to be fair to him just then, he's had probably come out of it worse than Callum Hudson-Odoi. He's got by him a couple of times, delivered some dangerous crosses in front of us for Forest, but there stood up to his task, defended well, closed the space to Callum Hudson-Odoi, was able to make a really good tackle.
Gibbs-White chipping the ball down the line on the right side, but too much on it for Amari Hutchinson, and it rolls out of play for a Brighton goal kick. 2-1 they lead Nottingham Forest under these very grey skies on the south coast. Mind you, it looks like the rain has relented. I don't know about you, but I had a journey down here this morning which was a very sodden one.
I think it's a game you look forward to when the weather's like that as a player, that you know it's going to be real fast, frenetic, and I think the players have certainly started that way. But yeah, when we were on the way here, it certainly wasn't the nicest of conditions to be watching a game of football in.
Welbeck with the layoff on the halfway line. Milner it is who gives possession away. Aina able to step in front of Mitoma from that right back position for Nottingham Forest, with just the one change for them from the team that were beaten 1-0 by Liverpool at home last week. 12 shots Nottingham Forest had in that first half against Liverpool. No one has done that to Liverpool for more than a decade, and of course Forest did not score in those first 45 minutes, and it came back to bite them, didn't it, right at the end.
And I think we saw that again in their previous one against Wolves when they had sort of 36 shots, I think it was, on target, and 36 shots on goal, and they still couldn't score. And obviously Sean Dyche then loses his job because of that. It's just, that shows you the golf in class. And when you have to have those key moments, like Morgan Gibbs-White has come up with his goal today, they've just been a little bit lacking for Forest too often this season.
It's funny though, isn't it? They dismissed Dyche off the back of a draw with Wolves, and then Wolves have gone on and drawn with Arsenal and beaten Aston Villa. So it you know, the form wasn't franked in the way we thought it was going to be.
No, and I think if you've watched Wolves enough, you'll have seen the improvements they've had under Rob Edwards, and again they showed that with their performance, and I think they've took teams very, very close recently, and obviously Forest have made the decision that they've just looked at that league position, not the way Wolves were playing, and Sean Dyche has lost his job.
Gomez lay off on the halfway line, Vifa carrying it forward, lots of room in front of him, and he keeps going, edge of the penalty area, right-footed shot, didn't have the thrust behind it that was needed from Mats Vifa, but the whole picture suddenly opened up for the Brighton fullback.
Well, it did, and I'm again looking at Forest's recovery to try and get back and stop Vifa, and he drives in, he gets himself into that, like I say, that number 10 position in the centre of the goal, around that D of Forest area, and he then tries to get it back on his right foot, and then the space is sort of lost and he's unable to get any real strike. He tries to pass it into the near corner, but the strike and the power is never going to struggle Sells.
Murillo's given the ball away from the edge of his own penalty area. Welbeck's got it, right-footed shot just wide of the post. Sells was outstretched. I think he had that covered, the Nottingham Forest goalkeeper. He didn't look overly concerned despite plunging down to his right-hand side. Goal kick, 2-1 Brighton.
And I think now if you look at the setup from the position on the halfway line, whenever Brighton are attacking, Forest are leaving 3 players up, which is causing them to be outnumbered in certain areas, and they're just playing straight through the middle of Forest and finding these pockets just outside the 18-yard box, and then they have time to turn and get shots off. So Forest need to change something a little bit because there's still a long way to go.
Big bank of Nottingham Forest supporters over towards our right-hand side in the south stand, behind Matt Sells' goal as he sends it forward, the Forest goalkeeper, to the halfway line. Igor Jesus wins his latest aerial battle. 26 minutes played at the Amex, 2-1 Brighton lead against this Nottingham Forest team who are just outside the bottom 3. Results went their way yesterday. Spurs, the last time I heard news from Craven Cottage, were behind against Fulham, as is still the case, so everything is going Forest's way, but crucially it isn't here for them, despite pulling themselves level through that Gibbs-White goal. Anderson sending it over the top down the right. Hutchinson offside, and he knew it as well. I think the body language told you that Amari Hutchinson was expecting that flag to go up.
He was, but I think that's that key thing I mentioned for Forest. They're certainly keeping Hutchinson high and wide on that right hand side, Hudson-Odoi high and wide on this left hand side, and any balls played square into the centre of the park are just being flipped over the top to try and get in behind Vifa and Kadioglu for Brighton, and just try and create those spaces and chances to then maybe create more space for Morgan Gibbs-White to pick up those second balls or the space in that number 10.
What's slightly strange about this situation for Brighton today is, having won last week, this is their first opportunity to win consecutive games in the Premier League since November, when they beat Brentford and then Nottingham Forest.
Well, yeah, there you go. It's all the narratives are set up now, but both teams, you would say, have had a relatively decent start. Just Forest defensively are taking that risk by not defending in numbers.
Murillo with the header away, the Brazilian with the baggy shorts that have sort of become his trademark really since he came into the Premier League. And Brighton with the ball inside their own half with one of their centre-halves here, Van Hecker, who is such an eminent threat at both ends of the pitch for Brighton from set pieces, and Murillo goes all the way back to Matt Sells. And that's just the sight of Solly March warming up on the touchline. You might be able to hear the warm ripple of applause for him as he emerges from the substitutes bench. We might see him today for the first time since April of last year as Matoma comes forward for Brighton on his own, goes over. It was just inside the box, but I think Anderson was deemed to have got a touch on the ball there, and Forest sweep it away. Yeah,
he's just playing off that inside left, and he's just, every time he receives the ball, he's taking it inside with his right foot, which then is allowing him to drive towards Forest 18-yard box. And I mentioned that central area where Forest have been really strong, in my opinion, over the last few weeks. It just seemed to be too much space that's being allowed for Brighton. And I just think it's the system that Brighton are playing with at the moment, with Hinshelwood just playing almost like as a number 10 and Welbeck's dropping in, which is the rotations at the minute Forest can't seem to get to grips with.
Well, we had 3 goals in the first 15 minutes, 3 goals since that have not brought us any goals. Matt Sells actually is down, the Forest goalkeeper. He's sat down. Forest are continuing because they've got the ball up the other end of the pitch, but that is a concern for Forest, the fact that Sells is clearly indicating that he's got an issue on his return to the team today. So he's on his feet now, but Forest down the other end with Hudson-Odoi cutting in from the left flank. Forest number 7 into the feet of Amari Hutchinson, who's come over to support him now with the bright blonde dyed hair of Hutchinson. Elliot Anderson still possession on this left side. Anderson skips away from 2, then he goes over and he's deemed to have dived over the challenge from Diego Gomez, who's going to get booked, Elliot Anderson, for simulation there. Brighton free kick.
Well, immediately I was looking at Sells and seeing if Angus Gunn was out warming up for Forest, and then Anderson goes through and he's implicating straight away that he's slipped, but he's definitely not slipped there, and Diego Gomez comes out and tries to swipe the ball, and then there's no real connection. It's almost daylight between the two, and Anderson's tried to kid the referee on that one, and rightly so, he's been booked for that. But Sells is now receiving treatment, and I think Forest is going to have to look like it's going to have to make a change.
Well, there's no Ortega on the bench today. He's been the goalkeeper that Forest have used recently, having joined from Manchester City. So if it is to be a change, it would need to be Angus Gunn.
I think the only thing from my experience is this a tactical one, because I'm looking down at Angus Gunn and his intention at the moment. He's just putting a bib on right in front of the dugout, strolling along. No real intention of a change looking likely, as Forest are now crowding round Pereira in front of their 18-yard box.
Well, I mean, this is a big talking point in football, isn't it? I know they had a meeting yesterday with all the people that matter when it comes to law changes over what can potentially be done to stop situations like this from occurring. Luke?
Well, it's going to have to be, if your goalkeeper goes down, he'll have to go off like any other outfield player, because certainly the reason that Sells has gone down, it's glaringly obvious the whole Forest team is over with Pereira as he gets his tactics board or his paper out to deliver the messages that he thinks he needs to implement to his team, as Sells then gets back up. But they couldn't have made it any more obvious with the way Angus Gunn's got up from the bench, grabbed the bib, strolled down as if he's taking a warm-up. If there was some serious issue, he'd be immediately getting gloves, everything would be stripped and ready to go. Yeah,
it's a great spot from you, Luke, for that, because Matt Sells is now up, having been seen to by those 2 members of Nottingham Forest's physiotherapy team, and as if by magic he appears like he has recovered from whatever he may have been struggling from a moment ago. So the gun doesn't need to be loaded as it is.
Are you going to stop it? I'm not sure, but it's certainly something that's being used now for a benefit, especially if Forest need to get something and get themselves back in this game.
Well, the one thing, just to complete that, the one thing that was being talked about was the possibility of taking an outfield player off when your goalkeeper goes down for a period of time, but that was actually rejected in that meeting that I was talking about yesterday. So we'll see what solutions they might come up with to solve that from happening. We're back underway, 32 minutes played. Brighton leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1. Diego Gomez and Danny Welbeck with the Brighton goals, either side of Morgan Gibbs-White's equaliser for Forest. The Gomez and the Gibbs-White goals in particular, well worth watching tonight on BBC One on Match of the Day from 10:30. You can catch it on the iPlayer, of course, and as is the case this season too, if you can't wait for Match of the Day at 10:30, around about 8:30 on the BBC Sport website, you can see all the goals from the day's Premier League football. As Brighton come through the middle of Forest with Hinshelwood 10 yards outside Forest penalty area. Here is Gross laying it off to the right hand side for Vifa with the curly hair. Back to Gross again, and then Milner with his right foot curls it up to the far post. Aina wins the header and is headed, I think, by Matoma, albeit accidentally, and he's now down holding the back of his head, the Forest defender, as it goes out of play for a throw.
Yeah, and again Brighton playing right through the middle of Forest, creating some chances straight into Hinshelwood's feet. Keep it well, and then the delivery from Milner is really high and looped towards Matoma, and yes, it's definitely a clash of heads. Matoma's forehead just catches the back of Aina's head and he goes down, but thankfully he's up, because he's certainly someone that Forest have missed way too much this season.
With the scores as they are, Brighton would go up to 11th in the Premier League table potentially with this 3 points here. In fact, I'll correct that, 12th, because Palace are still leading at Manchester United, so Brighton would go 12th, Palace in 11th, Fulham, who are now 2-0 up against Spurs, would go up into 8th. Fulham. That is a scoreline of serious concern for Tottenham Hotspur, who are 4 points above the bottom three.
Well, it's certainly the unthinkable, isn't it? Tottenham Hotspur in a relegation scrap inside the Premier League, and some serious problems that have gone wrong at that football club for far too long now.
That's live on Sports Extra right now. Fulham against Spurs, Manchester United against Crystal Palace, available on 5 Live, all of the games on BBC Sounds as well. 2-1 here to Brighton, and they come into the box with Hinshelwood, who plays the 1-2. Hinshelwood shoots, and he just didn't make the connections he wanted, and the ball skews off his right foot and out of play for a Forest goal kick.
Again, it's Brighton, it's lovely football, and it's Matoma's movement, it's Kadioglu's movement, and then Hinshelwood causing so many problems with his positioning in that number 10 slot. And the ball's played across him, he lets it just run across to his right foot as it drifts across the D outside of Forest's penalty area. But he just strikes across it too much, and he can't quite any real connection on it to cause Sells problems in Forest goal.
Hudson-Odoi caught by Vifa as he was slaloming his way across the pitch there from left to right. So free kick to Nottingham Forest. Final 10 minutes of the first half. Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1 is the scoreline at the Amex Stadium, as Aina collects the ball on the far right hand side from that Forest free kick, and back it goes to Milenkovic in the centre half position, who has not missed a minute for Nottingham Forest in the Premier League this season, Nikola Milenkovic. And Gibbs White, who has come short to retrieve it from his centre back, then sends a high ball forward to Aina, the right back, who has gone a long way forward down that right wing, but he miscontrols the ball under pressure from Kadioglu, and it bounces out of play for a Brighton throw.
Yeah, and I mentioned Morgan Gibbs-White finding those positions. He's now finding himself at right full-back inside his own half, just behind the halfway line. Delivers a long ball for his right back into that far corner. And that's probably where you want to see him making those moves, because certainly in central midfield for Forest, they've got that range of pass to be making those themselves, and they just need him higher up the pitch now to really cause Brighton problems, because since their first goal and equaliser, they've caused Brighton 0 problems.
Lewis Dunk cleverly guiding the ball with his head back to goalkeeper for Brugge, and we've just seen a shot of Vitor Pereira, the Nottingham Forest manager, down on the touchline. New haircut, it looks like, for Vitor Pereira, with the short back and sides. He's looking very smart today for his first away Premier League game with Nottingham Forest. Has his first Premier League goal with the club as well. Spoke about being, and I quote him, angry with football. That was his quote last week when Forest lost after having all those chances against Liverpool. Here's Diego Gomez, who got the first of the 3 goals that we've had in this game today. Van Hecke, 20 yards outside Forest box. Right footed cross diving header, great save Sells. Plunging down to his left-hand side with Hinshelwood, who launched himself at that very good delivery in the end from Van Hecke.
Brilliant delivery in from Van Hecke, and again it's the overload, the extra man, the body in the middle, and I keep saying Hinshelwood's name. He keeps finding those spaces, and he's almost on the penalty spot. It's a brilliant low delivery, and he just stoops to try and guide one into the corner. Probably doesn't get enough contact on it to beat Sells, but another warning sign for Forest that they have to work a little bit harder in their own defensive third and not allow the ball to come in quite so easily.
He did score in this fixture 2 seasons ago, Jack Hinshelwood. Corner to Brighton, which Pascal Gross, back at the club, having left for Borussia Dortmund, rejoined in January. He takes it with his right foot towards that penalty spot area. Murillo and Dunk were the 2 jumping for it, and it's broken for Hutchinson, who's suddenly got a run at Brighton's defence here. But look who's back there, James Milner. He was one of 3 Brighton players on the retreat, and he stabs the ball away from Hutchinson.
Yeah, and Hutchinson did brilliantly to try and get away from both of them, and then he decided, he had the clear run on goal, and he just decided on the halfway line to cut the ball back, and then James Milner's presence, his nous, his know-how, just drives his right foot into the side of the ball and lifts Hutchinson off the ground and wins the ball back for his team. But his commitment to recovery whilst his team have had that corner was fantastic.
And Brighton have got a throw here on the right-hand side with the scoreline: Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1. Luke Chambers, formerly of Ipswich and Nottingham Forest, amongst others, with us in the commentary box at the Amex this afternoon on our slightly differing position to our normal 5 Live position, Luke, because normally we are very low, right behind the substitutes bench, almost down on the touchline. But George Cummings, super producer from 5 Live, sorted us out for a position up next to the TV commentators today. So we've got a much loftier position here in the West Stand, and we've got our screen as well. So we are very well set this afternoon.
Well, I just think it allows you to see the game in such a different way, because when you're lower you can't see the positions as well, and I keep talking about Hinshelwood's position now. He's playing in between Murillo and Anderson, and no one's really picking him up, and then he's allowed to just get into the box unopposed, unmarked, just ghosting around these areas, because Brighton know that at the moment Forest are struggling to deal with that area on the pitch, as they had another chance just down that far left hand side with Kadioglu outnumbering Aina at the back, because they're leaving almost the front 4 to try and cause Brighton problems, but it's certainly not causing them any at the moment.
Some noise coming from the Nottingham Forest fans over towards our right hand side, sensing perhaps their team need a bit of encouragement as we move into the final few minutes of this excellent first half. It really has been good fare. Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1, in a fixture that always tends to deliver goals. And you may very well remember the fixture of last season between these two at the City Ground, which brought lots of goals, but exclusively Nottingham Forest goals. Forest 7, Brighton 0 in this Premier League game last season, February 2025. That was, unsurprisingly, Fabian Herzler's heaviest ever defeat as a manager.
And it shows you the gulf in difference of performance and league position and quality that Forest have shown between then and now. Really struggling this season to get any consistency, and the goals is the problem, right? Let's not beat around the bush. The goals are the problem. The chances creation has been pretty decent. They're just not taking the chances that have come their way.
Yes, a year ago today, Nottingham Forest were 3rd. They'd just drawn 0-0 with Arsenal. Their next game, game 28, they beat Manchester City at the City Ground. So it has been an unfortunate tumble, as was the case there for Vifa, for Brighton, the right back, as he gives the ball away, stumbling backwards, and Forest get the ball back, and Murillo goes all the way back to Matt Sells, who... Am I allowed to cast aspersions now on the Sells timeout earlier? He's moved very freely since then. He's made a couple of saves, so I think it's safe to assume he wasn't too badly hurt when he went down earlier. Lovely ball over the top for Hudson-Odoi down the left-hand side for Forest. Oh, through the legs of Vifa into the box, right-footed shot. That might have been going in too. Instead, the deflection sends it spinning over the bar, and it's a corner to Forest.
Well, it looked from the beginning of the attack that Ola Aina, what was he doing? He got the ball sort of 15 yards outside of his own penalty box. He cut in on his left foot, and he smashed the ball over Vifa 70 yards into the path of Callum Hudson-Odoi. Vifa then knows he's in trouble, goes in too quick, isn't able to slow down quick enough. Hudson-Odoi just nicks it through his legs, and the goal seems to open up, but it's that man again. Van Hecke comes across with a brilliant block. So
corner to Nottingham Forest. They're trailing Brighton by 2-1 at the Amex. Left-footed from Hutchinson, dunking his 6-yard box to clear it away with his head. Here's Hudson-Odoi again. He has to go back towards Aina, who's the furthest one back in terms of Forest outfield players, and he plays the ball out to the right-hand side for Hutchinson, who took that corner initially. Infield towards Gibbs-White, 25 yards outside Brighton's penalty area. Into the box now for Jesus, who tries to turn it across. Van Hecke with another block and another Nottingham Forest corner.
Yeah, certainly whatever the conversations were with Pereira on this near side when Sells was injured, should we say, in quotes, commas, they've certainly improved in terms of their structure, being able to create chances, overloads, especially in that far corner with Amari Hutchinson and players around him. So another corner to Forest.
And Hutchinson to take this one too. 5 Premier League assists for Amari Hutchinson, former Chelsea and Ipswich man. Raises his right arm into the air, Hutchinson, and delivers left-footed, and Van Hecke nods it away. And there were so many bodies again inside that 6-yard box. It's come out to the left wing for Hudson-Odoi, curls it beautifully back in just out of reach of Murillo, who lunged a leg at it, but he couldn't quite get there. Forest Brazilian centre-back. Yeah, Hudson-Odoi did well to keep the ball alive once the ball had gone over and out from the corner. Hesitated, then delivered a really teasing cross. And Murillo's, it looked like his eyes lit up, and then it just had so much whip and curl on it that it just drifted away, and he couldn't quite get on the end of it. But Van Hecke was very close by again. He's been fantastic for Brighton inside this first 45 minutes. Vitor Pereira sat down in his technical area, the Forest boss, legs crossed, and with a pen in his right hand, scribbling away on a little notepad ahead of the half-time whistle, which is only 90 seconds plus injury time away here at the Amex Stadium. And I'm in one of those positions where I really don't want this half to come to an end, because it's been such a good watch, and Forest have been as entertaining as Brighton, but it's Brighton who've got the 2-1 lead here, with all those 3 goals in this game coming in that first quarter of an hour. Luke Chambers.
Yeah, it is. It's just in front of the Forest technical area. Anderson's gone down. It looks as if he's holding his face again. I think it was a coming together between him and Gomez off the ball. Just a little clip round the head potentially. I think he's just turned into Gomez's shoulder, just in front of, like I said, Forest bench, but no real appeals from anyone. It was just a coming together as Anderson went down and turned into his shoulder. Very painful one as a player, because it's ones you don't expect. But yeah, I'd certainly agree. The first half's been very, very entertaining, but the intensity needs to be kept up. Brighton have certainly played with that in the way they've pressed Forest.
That free kick from Murillo, he was trying to play it out towards Aina on the right hand side, and he bashed it straight into Welbeck's head. They were a little fortunate there, Forest, that didn't ricochet towards a Brighton player, having ricocheted off Welbeck's face. Yeah,
a little bit lazy for Murillo, and he loves to play with that little calm nature, but sometimes those risks versus reward aren't really thought about too much. And yeah, fortunately for Forest, tried to clip one over to Milenkovic across the pitch, and Welbeck almost cuts this out.
Right, let's see how many minutes we're going to have added on. 3 is the answer at the end of this first half, and there is a bit of sunshine all of a sudden appearing from behind the clouds above the predominantly blue Amex Stadium here, as Hudson-Odoi for Nottingham Forest, back to Murillo on the halfway line on the near left-hand side. Forest going from right to left in this first half, so their supporters are behind them as it stands. They'll be going towards them in the second half as Van Hecke makes the interception on the edge of his penalty area. Hinshelwood takes the ball off Welbeck. Matoma runs forward with it, but he runs into Milenkovic, who lifts it up towards Igor Jesus. Brighton were a little slow to respond to that. Vifa's recovered now and Van Hecke's cleared, but it was almost as if they were anticipating an offside flag to go up there. And now Jesus is away from Van Hecke, and he's got past Milner, and his right-footed shot has hit Dunk, and Dunk is eventually going to leave it for Verbruggen.
And for me, that's been the difference so far, as Dunk runs off holding his ear as he puts his head in the way of Jesus' shot, but it's really just flicked away from Van Hecke. Probably the first mistake he's made, and he's on the edge of the 18-yard box and tries to bend one in that far corner of Verbruggen's goal, and Dunk came to the rescue of his partner at the back, puts his head in the way, and Brighton get away with a half chance, I'd say, for Forest at the end of this first half.
Fulham still leading Tottenham Hotspur by 2-0, and it's still Manchester United 0, Crystal Palace 1. Both of those games are live on BBC Sounds, 5 Live Sports Extra. Arsenal against Chelsea to come from 4:30 to see if the Gunners can re-establish their 5-point lead at the top, as Amari Hutchinson is penalised for a foul on the edge of Brighton's penalty area. Shot wide anyway, free kick to Brighton.
Yeah, he just Dunk's watching the flight of the long ball, tries to get the header. Hutchinson just steps into his back, causes him to go down, and the referee's certainly going to give that free kick as Hutchinson walks off, almost gesturing, why have you given that, when it's a blatant foul in Dunk's favour, as he walks off again with his new bleached blonde haircut.
Yeah, he is unmissable today, isn't he, Amari?
You, Chris, to be honest.
Unmissable. I can absolutely assure you it wouldn't. Here's Milner, back to the halfway line. They like that, the Brighton crowd. Just the calmness of James Milner to be aware that wasn't quite so calm from Cadiolo, and it was all of a rush for Brighton. All of a sudden he's given the ball away. Sangare then, unfortunately for Forest, has done the same, relinquishing possession. Dunk goes back to Verbruggen. We're in the final seconds of the 3 minutes of added on time. 2-1 Brighton lead Nottingham Forest as Milenkovic heads forward, and it bounces back the way of Elliot Anderson out to this left hand side for Williams, and Murillo from the centre half position just striding up towards the halfway line. But Forest need to do something quick if they're to get this goal that they need to get back into the game before half-time at least. Igor Jesus cannot hang on to it, and there is the half-time whistle, and it's been a brilliant first 45 minutes of Premier League football. Proper entertainment. Brighton leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1. Diego Gomez with the opener after 6 minutes, a right-footed shot on the half volley across goal, superbly hit beyond Matt Sells. And then after 13 minutes, a goal of equal quality from Morgan Gibbs-White. striking from outside the penalty area, beating Verbruggen high to his left. But within 2 minutes of that, Brighton back in front through Danny Welbeck's close range finish for his 10th Premier League goal of the season. And as they were, Nottingham Forest remain 2 points above the bottom three with 45 minutes to sort this situation out. Luke Chambers.
Yeah, what a game of football in that first half, and it's just the two different sides. Brighton have just had that little bit more quality when it comes to taking those opportunities. Mitoma's missed a fantastic chance to really potentially put that game to bed at 3-1, but when it comes to the goals that have been scored today, all three have been a first-class standard.
And what about Brighton then? Because this looks much more like a Brighton team in the early months of Hurtzler, in the last few months of De Zerbi, rather than Brighton of the last few months. Clearly that win at Brentford last week has reinstalled the confidence that maybe they were missing.
I think I would agree, yeah. I think they've played with so much intensity. I think Forest have tried to play out from the back, which has probably played into Brighton's plan of wanting to be on the front foot, wanting to be high pressure, wanting to create chances, which probably they haven't been able to do of late. And Mitoma, Welbeck, Hinshelwood in particular, and Gomez, the way they've been able to put pressure on Forest has really stopped them creating any real threats of possession throughout the first half. But the real interesting thing for me is Brighton have been defending against four players, 4 for 4 on the halfway line whenever Forest have tried to play out from the back, and I think that comes from that clean sheet, that being confident, really playing on top of the game. Van Heck has been different class up against Jesus. Dunk's dealt with anything in behind that's had to deal with, and Kadioglu against Hutchinson's really probably had the better of that one. The only one I would probably question is who's come out on top of Vifa and Hudson-Odoi just in front of us. That's been a real intriguing battle.
And maybe that is part of the reason why this has been such a good watch at the Amex Stadium so far. Brighton leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1. The half-time whistles have gone in the other Premier League games that got underway at 2 o'clock. Fulham 2, Spurs 0. The goals from Harry Wilson and Alex Iwobi. And it's Manchester United 0, Crystal Palace 1. Maxence Lecroix with the early goal for Palace. Arsenal against Chelsea to come from 4:30 on 5 Live and on BBC Sounds, but you can come back with us here on 5 Live Sports Extra 2 for live second half coverage of this game, and it feels like the sort of commentary that you don't want to miss. It's been very, very entertaining. At half time here, Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1. Welcome back to 5 Live Sports Extra 2. Brighton leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1 here. One of 3 Premier League games taking place at 2 o'clock that we have got you completely covered for here on 5 Live and on BBC Sounds this afternoon, with Arsenal against Chelsea to come from 4:30. Luke Chambers, part of our commentary team here at the Amex Stadium. Brighton have been out and ready to go for a couple of minutes. Forest just getting themselves into position now. We've had a really super first 45 minutes. Brighton twice in front through Diego Gomez and most recently Danny Welbeck's goal. The equaliser from Morgan Gibbs-White for Nottingham Forest between that. All 3 of the goals coming in the first 15 minutes of this match. And Brighton with a chance to do the double over Nottingham Forest today, having beaten them at the City Ground in November by 2-0. They've only ever beaten Nottingham Forest twice in the same league season, 3 times before. We're underway in the second half. No changes for either team. I'll give you the team news in just a moment. Brighton going from left to right in the blue and the white, and Nottingham Forest in their familiar red shirts, white shorts and red socks from left to right towards their bank of visiting supporters in the South Stand. Luke, let's hope for more of the same, because it was a really watchable first 45.
And hopefully the same start again, because it was absolutely electric. Both sides playing with real intention, real purpose to their play, to try and create as many chances as possible early on. But it looks like initially there's a problem over for Hinshelwood. It might be actually James Milner who's gone down. Potentially early knock and a challenge right on that far side, far touchline. He's not someone that goes down lightly as he springs back up in his 40th year and sprints back to the halfway line.
He was down on his haunches, James Milner. When I get into that position at home, I without even playing 45 minutes of football, there's not a chance I'm springing out of it like that.
I know how he feels, you know what I mean? I know how he feels that play. He's certainly grimacing now, and he's certainly someone that's made a real impact being back in the team and really bolstering that central midfield for Brighton.
655 Premier League appearances now for James Milner, the 900th of his club career today, and with the ball on the halfway line for Forest, going up towards Igor Jesus and being headed away by Van Hecke for Brighton. Let me just give you the teams. Verbruggen in goal for Brighton, Vifa, Van Hecke, Duncan, Kadiolu, Milner, Gross, Hinshelwood, Gomez, Mitoma and Welbeck. Gomez and Welbeck, the two Brighton goal scorers. And for Forest, who have got the ball on the halfway line with Milenkovic, Sells in goal, Aina, Milenkovic, Murillo and Williams, Sangare and Anderson in midfield, Hutchinson, Gibbs-White, the Forest goal scorer, Hudson-Odoi and Igor Jesus. No changes from either Fabian Hürzeler or Vitor Pereira at half-time.
Well, the score is 2-1, but I think both managers, obviously bar probably that second goal and how it's conceded by Forest, both managers have been relatively happy with both performances. They've both created chances, both been playing with that, like I said, high intensity, trying to win the game. So yeah, we're likely to see the same 11 for a little bit longer now.
So just a reminder of the state of play for these two at the beginning of the afternoon. Brighton were 14th with 34 points, Forest in 17th with 27, as Mitoma sends the ball short for Kadiolu, punched into the area for Gross, pulled back for Welbeck, left-footed shot. Williams a yard in front of him, sticks out a leg, blocks it, and it spins away for a Brighton corner. Yeah, lovely play and lovely build-up play again. Real lovely ball from Kadioglu, just reversing it along the outside of the penalty area. Gets in, Welbeck's got to cut back, but it's a brilliant block from Williams. And that's just the first time I've seen Forest really defend in numbers, and they've had to do that, otherwise it would have been 3-1 to Brighton. So early in this second half, 3 minutes of it played, Brighton leading Nottingham Forest 2-1, and the Seagulls have a corner which Gross takes with his right foot. Aina at the near post, heading it up but not out of the box, and then Hudson-Odoi knocked it down, and Aina nearly tripped Gomez over. It's come to Mitoma from Gross. Mitoma right-footed shot, went to try and beat Sells at his near right-hand post, and it's a couple of yards wide. Yeah, another bright start from Brighton. Gross does brilliantly, just delivers a little ball 5 yards inside Forest's corner of their penalty area. Mitoma picks it up, and we know he loves to be there. It just looked like from our position he wanted to whip it into that far corner, but then decided to take that extra touch which off-balanced Callum Hudson-Odoi in his defensive duties, and he just dragged it wide of that near post. But warning signs for Forest that they're going to have to get again tighter, because first half they allowed Brighton too much space in and around their goal. Nottingham Forest, who on Thursday night, despite losing to Fenerbahce in that second leg of their knockout round playoff, are into the round of 16 in the Europa League. FC Midtjylland, the Danish team for them again, because of course they met each other in the league phase on a very difficult night, in particular for Ange Postecoglou 3 weeks into the job. The Forest fans were chanting that night for him to be sacked. He was shortly afterwards. His Vifa for Brighton on the right hand side, back for Milner, 10 yards outside the Forest box, right-footed cross, little too high for Welbeck, who lunged at it, didn't get anything on it, and Aina clears, and Gibbs-White strides away from two. This is a brilliant run from Gibbs-White. He's gone past Dunk, he's in the right channel. Igor Jesus waiting in the box. Gibbs-White into the penalty area, tipped up to the far post, and just about getting there was Karo Mitoma ahead of Hudson-Odoi. And for me, that is why Brighton are a top team, and he is a top player. He's ran the length of the pitch as the left winger to cut out the ball at the far side of the 6-yard area when it looked like Callum Hudson-Odoi was able to take a tap in. Brilliant defending and commitment to his side. And Murillo lifted one into the box. That's caught by Verbruggen in all yellow, and the Brighton goalkeeper underarm bowls it out to the left-hand side for Pascal Gross on his 272nd Brighton appearance. One of their most well regarded, I would say, of the last 20 years, Pascal Gross. That's his pass infield, taken on by Hinshelwood. He's unlucky. He tried to just poke it through the legs of Murillo, who got there in front of Jack Hinshelwood, the young Brighton midfielder, but it's won back again by Brighton. Welbeck, and then Hinshelwood, and Welbeck, having played the pass, is fouled by Murillo. So it's a free kick to Brighton, left-hand side of the box, but only just outside the Forest penalty area. And they've taken it quickly, but Andy Madley's not happy with the position of the ball, so we'll go again.
Well, again, it's Forest. They're playing into Brighton's hands. I'm all for being calm and collected when you win the ball back in your defensive third. But to put the ball at risk the way Forest are, through Aina, through Murillo, feeding a ball into Anderson when he's got 3 players round him, it's just a real problem that they're creating for themselves. And with the quality that Brighton possess, they're able to cause you problems, and they've got a real dangerous position right on the corner, right in front of us, for this free kick to be taken on Forest's goal. 2
wins in the last 11 in the Premier League for Nottingham Forest. There were 4 Brighton players around the free kick, but 3 have now walked away to leave Pascal Gross on his own, and it is bang on the edge of the penalty area. It couldn't really be more at the corner point of the Forest box on this left-hand side, and Gross with his white boots standing over this Brighton free kick with how many in the middle in blue and white? 6 in total in various positions on the edge of the 6-yard box. Gross shoots low, Sells pushes it away. I thought for a moment that was going up and over him and into a dangerous position, and then Forest get it back again, only briefly, and it's hit Milenkovic. All very messy inside the Forest box. Murillo has to clear it out of play for a Brighton throw.
Yeah, really well worked. A short one to Milner, who gives it back to Gross, who just smashes one to the near post of Sells. And like you say, it just took a bobble off, I don't know how, off the Amex pitch, because it's beautiful down there, but it just kicked up off the surface. And credit to Sells, just kept his eye on it, pushed it away from goal. But it is certainly frantic now in that back area for Forest. But you look now on their approach, they are now banking up in 2 banks of 4 to win the ball back and allowing them to potentially play on that counter-attack, because in the first half they didn't defend in enough numbers.
52 minutes played, just ticking into the 53rd. 2-1 Brighton lead. Van Hecke piercing the Forest back line with the ball down the right-hand side. And despite the fact that Vifa slipped, he does manage to still get the corner out of Nico Williams.
Yeah, it's been a really bright start for Brighton. Again, they're forcing the issue as we just watch a replay of Gross's strike towards that near post from that free kick. But Forest are certainly now deciding that they're going to defend in numbers. They've banked up. Hudson-Odoi's dropped in. Hutchinson's dropped in front of Aina and Williams. They're now defending with a lot more structure, whereas the first half they almost gave Brighton too much space and maybe just dismissed the threat that they carried. So under grey-laden skies, a Brighton corner. Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1 here on 5 Live Sports Extra 2. Gross, right-footed, low one this time. Jesus is at the near post, and knowing that under a bit of pressure and perhaps with a bit of panic, he prods it behind for another Brighton corner. Yeah, I'm not sure whether Gross has under-hit the corner, but he's really drilled it in low, and I think they're looking for Gomez across that near point of the 6-yard box. But Forest have numbers there, deal with it well, but like you say, no risks being taken, just out for another Brighton corner. He
actually took that corner in the same way he took the free kick, just sort of hammering it down low into the ground, so he's going to get another chance, so maybe something a little different this time from the German. Lewis Duncan, Jan-Paul Van Hecke on the edge of Forest penalty area. They're making their moves now. In it goes, dunks at the back post, heads it back across goal, away as far as Cadioli, who hit it on the volley. It was going well wide of goal, and it's cleared by Forest up towards Hutchinson. That's a horrible tackle by Vifa. He's gone right through the back of Amari Hutchinson there, and Andy Madley very quickly on the scene. The referee, I think he was expecting a flare up there, has got the yellow card out of his pocket for the Dutchman.
Yeah, and I think you saw the reaction from Sangare. Initially it looked like, has he caught Hutchinson? He definitely did, but luckily for Amari Hutchinson, he just gets away with it because it's not really, the impact's not coming from the side. He's just tried to poke the ball away, but he's now gone down in the middle of the pitch. I think he's hurt himself in the challenge, Vifa, as he sits inside the centre circle. And thankfully for Amari Hutchinson, he's back on his feet. But Forest look like they're going to make a change with some activity down below us.
I don't know, by the way, how out of that tackle, just before we talk about this Forest change, I don't know how he ended up being the one that's come out worse from that, Mats Vifa.
I think he's just almost caught his Achilles, maybe the back of his heel in the grass as he's tried to slide and just jarred his ankle, but he's back on his feet.
Right, let's have a look at these Forest changes then. The first is Amari Hutchinson, and Jair Cunha's coming on, so that's the giant Brazilian centre-half, so he's the first change, and Luca Netz is the other Forest alteration, so that's 2 changes. So we've got the German Luca Netz, who joined in the most recent window from Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Jair Cunha, so I'm assuming that is a shift in formation from Nottingham Forest. I saw Hutchinson come off. Who was the other Forest player? Did you catch that, Luke, to come off there?
I'm just looking at the formation now. Sangare almost looks like he's just dropped into that centre-half area, but I think Cunha's gone into almost a back 3 now. Milenkovic has gone into the middle, Cunha's come to the right, Murillo's gone to the left, so it's almost like a back 3 into a midfield 5. Einer's playing a lot higher on this right-hand side. They're playing 3-5-2 almost now, and Morgan Gibbs-White has worked the ball brilliantly onto this near side.
His attempt to play the ball out to the left-hand side for Luca Netz, the substitute, was not the one he wanted to deliver. He's apologising immediately. Morgan Gibbs-White is out for a Brighton throw.
Yeah, disappointing from him. Forest worked that brilliantly. Like I say, they've gone into that back 3 now with Cunha, Milenkovic and Murillo. Should give them that little bit more security in that area where Hinchelwood's found so much space, dropping into a number 10 position.
The other player to come off was Nico Williams for Nottingham Forest, so Williams and Hutchinson off for that. Vitor Pereira changes as Sells, the Forest goalkeeper, slips as he clears inside his own penalty area and sends the ball careering out of play for a Brighton throw on this near left-hand side.
Yeah, Luca Netz has gone over to left wing-back Einer on this right-hand side, and real change of formation for Forest to try and salvage something from this game.
So Vitor Pereira mixing it up to ensure that, or to try to ensure that it doesn't become 16 straight Premier League games for him as a manager without a win, because his final few months at Wolves were not profitable, as you can tell by that statistic. Here is Vifor. It's only his second Premier League match in charge of Nottingham Forest today. Pereira, of course, has a win over Fenerbahce in the Europa League, that win out in Turkey. Here is Dunk for Forest. And talking of Turkey, here's the Turkish international, Ferdi Kadiolu, converted by Vitor Pereira from a winger into a left-back, so the story goes, from their time together at Fenerbahce.
Yeah, he certainly loves to get high and wide, which obviously shows his intent and his experience of being that wide player. He's lovely and calm and collected on the ball, and his delivery so far this afternoon has been absolutely first class.
And the quote from Vitor Pereira about Ferdi Kadiolu was, I said to him, do you want to be a good left winger or a brilliant left back? And he decided that it was to be the latter, as Matt Sells, plunging on top of the ball, just about keeps it in from the nod back to him from Jair Cunha.
Yeah, look, it travelled a long way, and Cunha almost probably could have left it if Sells had been a little bit more demanding. He then tries to flick it back to his goalie just from the edge of the 18-yard box and almost skids out for a corner, but Sells does well to keep it in play. So
approaching the hour, 2-1 Brighton lead, as they did from the 15th minute of this game, as Elliot Anderson, their enigmatic midfielder of Nottingham Forest, gives it to Igor Jesus, out to the right-hand side for Einer. Carried forward now by Gibbs-White. Right side of the Brighton penalty area. Low ball in. Igor Jesus is there. He slipped as he hit it. He's got it back again. And then Sangare shoots, and that took a deflection off Van Hecke. And it actually looped up and into the very grateful arms of Verbruggen.
Yeah, much better play again from Forest. And I mentioned him in the first half. It's Morgan Gibbs-White finds himself in the pockets, not always in the middle of the pitch. He's drifted out again to this near side in front of us, down Brighton's left-hand side, and Forest's right finds a massive amount of space, and he picks up a brilliant cutback just past the penalty spot for Igor Jesus, who just slips on impact, which looked like it's almost certainly to cause Brighton a problem. But fantastic response, and especially from that change in formation from Vitor Pereira on his side.
Luke Chambers with us here on 5 Live Sports Extra 2, almost 900 club career appearances to his name.
Yeah, almost, but I wouldn't take anything away from James Milner. What a servant to the game he's been.
Here's Murillo for one of Luke's former clubs, Nottingham Forest. Back to goalkeeper Sells, who is back in the Forest team today, having missed the last 3 Premier League games with that groin problem. And his pass out to the right-hand side for Ola Einer was a tricky one, both in terms of height and the fact that Kadiolu was jumping with him. and it goes out of play for a Brighton throw on the halfway line on this near left side.
Sometimes all that takes to turn the tide and the momentum of a game is just a bit of pressure on the opposition to make a mistake like that, which then re-engages the fans, and Brighton certainly done that really well this afternoon, and that extra bit of pressure on Sells to kick the ball out of the pitch is very much welcomed by the Brighton fans.
Van Hecke sending the ball back in field for Milner for Brighton. Here's Kadiolu for those in blue and white, going from right to left. Kadiolu, Welbeck coming into a midfield position to keep possession for Brighton, and then Dunk gives it to Van Hecke. The movement down the right from Vifa, but instead it's picked up by Diego Gomez. I don't think the pass was intended for Diego Gomez, but it won't matter to Brighton too much because they're still circulating this ball well, leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1 at the Amex.
Yeah, and Gomez has done all the hard things really, really well this afternoon.
And now he's giving it away, and Hudson-Odoi suddenly for Gibbs White. Gibbs White into the penalty area, back to goal, looking for Aina, who was arriving at the latest of them all, and Brighton clear, and Mitoma's first touch is good, and Diego Gomez has done the same, and then Murillo lunging at his feet, almost down on one knee, wins it back, and Murillo's having his shirt pulled. That's been seen by the referee, but he's allowed play to go on because Forest have got it on the left with Hudson-Odoi, and FIFA, excellent bit of defending from Brighton's right back there, because Hudson-Odoi looked like he was prepared to breeze past the Brighton man, and then Welbeck, the 1-2 with Hinshelwood, return to Hinshelwood with the heel of Danny Welbeck, the crossfield pass from Mitoma, out to the left-hand side for Brighton and for Kadiolu, support coming from Gross. This is encouraging from Brighton as we move into the 63rd minute of this game. They're leading 2-1.
Certainly turned into a lot more end-to-end stuff now. Brighton sensing that Forest are committing more bodies forward, so they're able to hit them on the counter-attack and try and put this game to bed. But Forest certainly coming back into the game with a lot more considered play, real quality now when they're on the break. And the only thing I would just say, when they do get in the dangerous areas down the outside of Brighton's penalty area, they've only got one or two bodies in that box. They've got to work a bit harder to try and commit a few more bodies in there to try and create that more chance to get themselves back in the game.
Brighton and Nottingham Forest, who have got the two main title contenders coming their way this week in the Premier League. Arsenal are going to be here at the Amex. Nottingham Forest have got to go to Manchester City on the same night, Wednesday night, and that is the perfect juncture to tell you that we have every single Premier League game in those midweek fixtures, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We will have all of them live for you on 5 Live, on our various 5 Live Sports Extra channels, and all of them via BBC Sounds. As Forest 2-1 down, as Gibbs White sends the ball down the right channel for Igor Jesus, just holding it up, the former Botafogo striker, and actually back to his former Botafogo teammate Jair Cunha. Saw both of those two playing for Botafogo at the Club World Cup last summer. As Elliot Anderson, low ball out to the right hand side for Aina, inside Brighton's final third, Forest possession. Aina finds the pass, and Vifa stepping in again. He's had a good few minutes, Mats Vifa, for Brighton, taking it away from Hudson-Odoi, and they're looking to play their way out, Brighton here. Forest are trying to stop that from happening, but they've worked it well. Mitoma trying to burst away down the left-hand side, gets away from Anderson, infield for Welbeck, 20 yards outside the box, pushes it on for Vifa. Vifa laying it up, Gomez with the hit, is blocked by Luca Netz, who brings it away for Forest.
What a big chance for Brighton. Just lost it at the wrong time. Vifa found himself almost inside Forest's 18-yard box and just couldn't get the shot off, decided to make the wrong decision.
And now it's open down the other end as Gibbs White carries it forward for Forest. He's gone into the penalty area, he's got 3 others in there with him. Hudson-Odoi's carried the ball into the box from the right, and Anderson from the edge of the penalty area, having been teed up by Hudson-Odoi, sends a curling effort 5 or 6 yards over the bar of the Brugans.
Yeah, end-to-end stuff. Brighton have had an attack, then Forest go down the other end because Brighton have committed bodies forward, and it's just the use of the final ball. But Forest do brilliantly in it. Again, it's Morgan Gibbs-White picking up those pockets off of the back of Brighton's midfield, delivering it out wide to Callum Hudson-Odoi, and he just leaves it to the edge of the 18-yard box for Anderson to come on to first time. I think there's just a little bit too much pace on the set-off from Hudson-Odoi, which causes Anderson to just get underneath it, not being able to whip that into that far corner. But again, good response from Forest.
Over 20 minutes played in the second half now. This Nottingham Forest team, who have only scored 26 Premier League goals this season. Only Wolves have got fewer of the other 19 teams in the top flight. And the one today scored by Morgan Gibbs-White, but Forest were only level for 2 minutes in the early stages of the first half in this one. We're in the second period now, and Kadiolu back into Van Hekke, who managed to get through 90 minutes against Brentford last week, Van Hekke, but he came off early in the game before against Aston Villa, as he did against Liverpool in the FA Cup. After that, missed the Crystal Palace game, the big derby here, because of injury as well, Van Hekke, which Brighton of course were beaten in. As Dunk finds the gap, but he can't take it in his stride. Hinshelwood halfway inside Forest half, and Milenkovic goes back to Sells to clear.
Yeah, and you mentioned the two centre-halves, how vital they've been. Having lost Adam Webster to that knee injury early on in the season, it's been a real hands to the pump for Brighton, and having to make those changes is not ideal, because you always want to have that settled back four. That's where you build your foundations from, and Brighton have probably struggled to have that in the last sort of 5 or 6 months now.
So here's Elliot Anderson for Nottingham Forest, who sits at the top of many statistics actually in the Premier League this season, most possession won being one of them, as Igor Jesus goes shoulder to shoulder with Van Hekke. Jesus thought he got the corner because Van Hekke put it behind, but Andy Madley viewed that as a push by Igor Jesus, and he's given Brighton the free kick.
Well, it's an absolutely brilliant bit of defending, because Igor Jesus starts his run really late and Van Hekke has to get across, and it looks like Igor Jesus is going to beat him for pace, but he just manages to get that shoulder just in front of Igor Jesus outside the 6-yard box and get his body across, and the contact comes just into Van Hekke's back from Jesus' shoulder, and rightly so. I think the free kick's been given. It's
just one Premier League goal in his last 13 games for Igor Jesus. This is Lewis Dunk for Brighton. Van Hekke 5 yards inside his own half. Milner goes back to Verbruggen, who was the goalkeeper on that afternoon last season that conceded those 7 against Nottingham Forest at the City Ground in this fixture.
It's just certainly an unrecognisable team in the way they're playing at the moment of Forest, and the amount of money that they spent over the summer. Is it 180 million? Does it look like this club and this team has really improved, especially in strength and depth? I'm not too sure, and questions will probably need to be asked if they can continue to keep their Premier League status in the summer.
Found out yesterday, Luke, that Bart Verbruggen was the first Brighton goalkeeper to concede 7 goals or more since Brian Powney, when Brighton were beaten 8-2 by Bristol Rovers in the 1970s under Brian Clough, which was quite a nice name to mention on a day like this. Of course, managed both of these clubs, one with far more success than the other. Vifa for Brighton, laying it back for Diego Gomez, who's 15 yards outside the box, slips into the penalty area for Gross. Gross with his trademark spin, which the Brighton fans enjoyed because they've seen that 100 times and more before. And then Murillo laying it back, and the clearance away by Luca Netz.
Yeah, Forest now defending, knowing they have to stay in this game, and Brighton really getting a little bit frustrated. Even though they're winning this game 2-1, I think the Brighton fans are expecting Brighton to really trying to take the game away from Forest, but Forest sticking to their task, staying in this game. There's certainly plenty more drama ahead of us, I think, in this sort of closing period of the game. Forest have certainly been improving after them changing formation into that 3-5-2.
And actually all the 2 o'clock Premier League games now have the scoreline 2-1, so it isn't just here. All 2-1 to the home side. Fulham 2, Spurs 1. Richarlison's got one back for Igor Tudor's team. And Manchester United, who were behind at home to Crystal Palace, are now 2-1 up. Lacroix, who scored Palace's goal, got sent off. Bruno Fernandes scored the penalty, and Benjamin Šeško has subsequently given Michael Carrick's Manchester United the lead at Old Trafford, as Brighton have a man down here. I didn't quite catch who that was. Yeah,
it's Vifa down on the far side, who has had an absolute brilliant afternoon, both defensively and in an attacking sense, and it's ironic that he sat inside Forest's half in the midway point and has that injury, because he's been really, really good. He's kept Callum Hudson-Odoi, who's been really positive over the last few weeks, kept him really quiet, especially in this second half. So it'll be a shame, and we mentioned the defensive problems and the lack of consistency that Brighton have been able to field in that area across the last few months.
He's only recently come back from a toe injury, Mats Vifa, missed 10 games for Brighton, but Unfortunately, his afternoon is going to be curtailed, and Joel Veltman is going to replace him, who has been around these parts for a long time. It feels like Joel Veltman, his contract's actually up at the end of the season. No indication as to whether he's going to get a new one. The 34-year-old with the number 34 on his back as he trots onto the pitch to take up that right-back position.
Yeah, and they're not losing any quality in that area. He's been a brilliant servant to Brighton, and he's certainly got the fans on his side, especially when you hear his name read out and the reaction that he gets from his home supporters, which is fantastic as any home player to have that relationship, and he's certainly built that over these last 5 or 6 seasons.
He's getting a good reception, Vifa. He's having to walk the long way round back to the dugouts, which are way beneath us here in the West Stand. He's in front of the North Stand at the moment, over to our left-hand side, getting a warm round of applause from the Brighton fans. 2-1, Brighton lead Nottingham Forest. And Vitor Pereira, 4th permanent Forest manager this season, heading for a 2nd Premier League defeat from his first 2 games since replacing Sean Dyche, unless Forest have got something up their sleeve in these final 18 minutes.
Well, the signs are fading a little bit for Forest. They're not really showing any attacking intent, any real quality to try and turn the tide of this game. You don't want them to go down without a whimper, but at the moment their main concern is just keeping Brighton at bay.
Brighton throw halfway inside Forest half, aimed towards Hinshelwood, who as ever is scampering around trying to make things happen. Murillo with the clearance away. Igor Jesus protecting that ball well in front of Van Hecker, who did leave a little bit on him. And now Forest are able to find that gap that they wanted to release Ola Aina down the right hand side. Matoma's gone back there with him. Aina lays it across to the edge of the Brighton penalty area to Jesus, on for Nets, and Nets to the left-hand side for Hudson-Odoi, who finds the space, left-footed cross, Gibbs-White with the header right at Verbruggen from about 8 yards out.
Yeah, good play again from Forest, and it came from Ola Aina, just delivering a lovely pass back across the pitch to Igor Jesus. They then attacked down the far side with Callum Hudson-Odoi, who this time drove down on his left foot, stood a lovely ball up to the back post, but Morgan Gibbs-White wasn't just arriving, he was already stood in position, just a standing leap to try and then generate the power off a looped cross from Callum Hudson-Odoi. Just wasn't able to generate enough power to struggle for Verbruggen.
Here he is again, Gibbs-White, trying to bring himself into a position of prominence in this game again, but the offside flag is up against Nottingham Forest, and they are going to make another change here. So Callum Hudson-Odoi departing, and Delane Bakwa, the Frenchman who signed last year for £35 million from Strasbourg, still yet to score a Premier League goal, is coming on to see if he can be the man to change Forest fortunes.
Well, if there's ever a time to start now, it is now, and he's really going to be needed now to try and just get Forest going again. It seems to just stalled a little bit. Yes, they had that chance, but I'd say that was more of a half chance than a real glaring one, and just need a little bit of a switch to change the tide at the moment.
Well, Jaya Cunha's clearance has only presented possession back to Brighton on this left channel, and Hinshelwood gave it to Gross. Gross tried to flick it inside for one final pass, and he couldn't quite execute it. Kadiolu wins it back, and then Anderson comes over and does the same for Forest. And Sangare with those long legs trying to weave his way out of danger, but he's run into trouble, and the ball is back with Brighton on the left with Welbeck, and he rather sensibly goes back to dunk on the halfway line. Yeah,
really experienced play again from Danny Welbeck. Just uses the ball, realises that we're under a little bit of pressure, just take it out, deliver it back to Duncan, do what Brighton have done for so long, just build that attack, build that pressure, alleviate any sort of carnage that we saw in that opening 20 minutes of the game. Really in control now, Brighton.
It would be their 9th Premier League win of the season. It would elevate them to 11th in the table as things stand. Match of the day tonight, 10:30 on BBC One, where you can catch all the goals. Joe Hart and Troy Deeney will be offering the expert analysis. You can get the highlights of all the Premier League games online from 8:30, and Monday Night Club will be well worth a listen tomorrow evening from 7. Mark Chapman is with Chris Sutton, Neda Manua and Rory Smith to dissect all the weekend action from the Premier League, maybe a splash of EFL, and I'm sure they will be talking about that frantic Old Firm derby today as well, which finished Rangers 2, Celtic 2, an equaliser for Celtic in stoppage time, having been 2-0 down in that game. and with Hearts at the top of that Scottish Premiership table, no doubt licking their lips over the outcome of that one in Glasgow.
Absolutely, what a result for them. Just really starting to believe now that the impossible could happen, and credit to them. They are answering every single question that's been posed to them so far this season.
Stoppage in play here. Diego Gomez, the Brighton player who scored the first goal of the afternoon, that brilliant right-footed half-volley shot, which found the bottom corner. He's down on the opposite side of the pitch to us, slowly getting back up to his feet again after a collision with Gibbs-White.
Yeah, and I think Forrest wanted a free kick right on that far side. Morgan Gibbs-White played a 1-2, continued his run. Gomez tried to step across him, and I think he just caught maybe an elbow on the back of the head from Gibbs-White as he just tried to get away from him, but no intent. He's certainly slowing the game down as much as possible, and Brighton, like I say, are in control of the tempo at the moment, and Forest have to do something now. They're almost employing a back four now, and a midfield three of Aina, Sangare and Anderson, and a front three now of Bakwa, Jesus and Nets.
As the drop ball goes back from Dunk to Verbruggen, and his long kick forward probably had too much power on it. Runs all the way through to Matt Sells, who lets it go out of play for a Forest goal kick. So in the final 15 minutes, Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1, and this is a scoreline which is going to leave Nottingham Forest dangling just above the Premier League's bottom three, just 2 points between them and West Ham United in 18th, who were beaten yesterday at Liverpool. Leeds lost yesterday at home to Man City. Spurs are losing at Fulham. So this could be a day for gains for Forest if they can make something happen here. Backward, right hand side of Brighton's penalty area, chops it onto his left foot, spins in the cross, and it's too heavy for Gibbs-White at the back post. Goal kick. Real
opportunity for Forest. Backward gets a 1v1 against Kadioglu and just chops and changes direction. He just does brilliantly to get himself almost 2 or 3 yards, and then it's almost like he's tried to shoot but also tried to cross at the same time. He just overhits it and it goes to absolutely nothing. But real warning signs. If I was Forest now, he'd be trying to get him the ball as often as possible, because Mitoma didn't help Kadioglu there in any way, shape or form, and it was 1v1 for him to try and create something.
TV director's doing a great job, by the way. I've just seen on the screen that classic shot that you need when your team's in a bit of trouble. Nottingham Forest fan, red Forest bobble hat on, and with his fingernails in his mouth chewing away. It's the sort of shot we see time and again, isn't it, at this point in a Premier League season when a side are in trouble. And Forest are in trouble here. Brighton are taking a quick throw, but Andy Madley has determined that actually it's not a Brighton throw, it's going to be a Forest throw.
Yeah, and he whistled early on it, didn't he? And there's a little bit of confusion out there now. He's adamant that it's a Forest throw. Veltman picks the ball up, as he does, uses all of his experience to just try and chuck it back on the pitch, and Hinshelwood is nearly through and away from Forest back four, but fortunately for them, they now have possession.
It's interesting, actually. The assistant referee was the one who did give the Brighton throw, but he was overruled by Mr. Madley. But Forest, who then had the throw, have lost the ball anyway, and Murillo's working very hard to try and win it back, sliding in that left back position. Does manage to emerge with the ball, but Brighton's persistent, wins it back off Elliot Anderson. Here's Diego Gomez, now Welbeck back to goal, edge of the box, lays it off for Gross, who sends it backwards again to Milner. A few moans and groans from the Brighton fans over that passage of play as Kadioglu tries to find Mitoma. He looks for the 1-2 himself, and Sangare sticking a boot in just to try and get Forest on the front foot again as Gibbs-White sweeps the ball to the right hand side for Bakwa. His attempts to cross the ball are intercepted by Kadioglu. There was a suggestion of a high boot by Sangare, and eventually the Forest man is penalised. It's a Brighton free kick.
Yeah, and you mentioned there a few moans and groans from Brighton now. I think they're just thinking, look, we've got this game in the palm of our hands. We can go and try and win it, but the experienced players in Brighton's side are just taking the sting out of the game at every opportunity, not really forcing any passes through the lines, waiting for that right opportunity to open up, and when that does happen, they're delivering lovely balls into pockets. But at the moment, when it's dropping to Milner or Gross, they're just recycling it into the wide areas to fullbacks and keeping it around the back, just taking control of these final few moments.
It's really finely poised, this, as we enter the final 10 minutes at the Amex. Mitoma and Jaya Cunha both trying to get a touch on the ball. Each felt that it should have been their throw. It's gone Forest way in the right back area for the visitors. Fabian Hertzler out on his feet, getting some instructions over to his players, the Brighton coach, as Hinshelwood sends it across into the central area for Diego Gomez. Veltman, the substitute, joining in down that right-hand side for Gross. Gross with a crossing opportunity, and what a ball it was too. The Brighton player couldn't quite reach it. It's away by Aina, and then Cadioli with the hip on the edge of the box, curling over the top of the bar.
Yeah, credit to Pascal Gross, because the play started to build up right in front of us on this near side. They switched it all the way across, and he continued his run from this near side all the way into that far channel and delivered a ball just first time as it's fed down the side, brilliantly along that 6-yard box. And I don't think Welbeck and Matoma on this far post thought that he was going to do it, and they just stood too far outside that back post. Otherwise, potential tap-in for them at this late stage.
Fulham still leading Tottenham Hotspur by 2-1. Manchester United still 2-1 up against Crystal Palace. Both of those games live for you right now on BBC Sounds 5 Live Sports Extra, and here on Sports Extra 2 and BBC Sounds it is Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 1, as Jair Cunha, who is only playing today, Jair Cunha, for the 5th time for Nottingham Forest, and it's only the 2nd time we've seen him in the Premier League. His last Premier League appearance was against Newcastle in October. 2 more Forest changes. So here comes Taiwo Awoniyi and Dan Ndoye. That's the double change for Nottingham Forest, and the last hope of change, I guess, in the direction of travel of this match, Luke Chambers, for Vitor Pereira.
Absolutely, and it is that last throw of the dice now, and it's sort of just trying to put players on the pitch that could potentially just change the tide at the moment. Dan Ndoye brings real pace to this near side. He's now picking up and playing in this right wing-back slot, and it's just one of them. It's just a hopeful change. I wouldn't say it's tactical, because it's just straight swaps for the players that have been left the pitch in Igor Jesus and Callum Hudson-Odoi.
So what have Nottingham Forest got left in the tank? A tank that will have felt pretty depleted, I imagine, in recent weeks. No win in their last 4 in the Premier League. You have to go back to the end of January to find the last Nottingham Forest win. That was against Brentford, and they are heading for another defeat here on a day where they yet could win this game, they could go within 1 point of Leeds United. Here is Dan Ndoye. First touch for him, having come off the bench, the Swiss international, who only has 1 Premier League goal, and it was on the very first game of the season for Forest against Brentford. But Brighton take the ball back from him. Welbeck a little slow, Sangare dispossesses him, Awoniyi, and then stepping in quickly was Lewis Dunk, who read that situation really well. And then Ndoye is fouled by Matoma, so it's going to be a Forest free kick halfway inside Brighton's half on the right.
And sometimes these are the moments here, just Matoma just almost blindsided with the tackle on Ndoye. It's almost a 50-50, and it's just this follow through that just lifts Ndoye up in the air as it's just in front of the technical area, halfway between the halfway line and the 18-yard box. But a real chance for Forest and Elliot Anderson to deliver some real quality to create that chance that Forest so desperately need to get back in this game.
And with 6 minutes left of the 90 to get back into the game, 2-1 they trail. Forest going towards those visiting supporters. Elliot Anderson right-footed, and the header is just wide of the post. It was Awoniyi who crept onto it. Verbruggen did look relatively assured, the Brighton goalkeeper, but it can't have been that far away, Luke.
Oh, it's a brilliant delivery from Anderson. It's that perfect one where you just want to whip it in behind that back 4, and at the right height it's perfect for Awoniyi, but I think he just runs too far past the flight of the ball. He's then unable to redirect it back across Verbruggen in Brighton's goal, and he just misses the target because he's just been too enthusiastic to get on the flight of it. But real chance for Forest.
And Vitor Pereira down there, arms folded in his big Nottingham Forest puffer jacket, watching on as Brighton spring forward. Welbeck nearly found the pass beyond Forest defence. It's on the edge of the box, and Welbeck's got it again, and Jair Cunha, who is a man mountain of a bloke, takes it away from him.
Yeah, good play from Forest, great defending.
And Hudson-Odoi, there was a shirt pull by Gross, but Ndoye goes on and he gets the luck of the bounce. No, he doesn't. Cadioli with the challenge, and it came off Ndoye and just eked away from him and out of play in the left back position for a Brighton throw.
Yeah, in fairness to Ndoye, probably should have called the play back for that really obvious shirt pull, but he beat 3 players, and I think the referee just wanted it to continue.
And now Brighton with a couple of changes of their own. Carlos Baliba is one of the changes, and the other, the name Solly March read out over the PA system. And this is the first time that Brighton have seen Solly March on the pitch in the blue and white for almost a year. He's had a horrible time of it over the last few years with injuries, Solly March, but he's back to a great reception, and off go Gomez and Milner, and Baliba's the other change with March.
I've played against Solly March over and over again. He just brings real quality to this Brighton team, and Brighton as a football club, he's been a fantastic servant for them, really ridden the wave of them reaching the Premier League and solidifying their status here, and it's fantastic to see him back on the pitch, and I think the reception that he received from the crowd just tells you everything you need to know about what sort of type of player Solly March is.
He is Brighton through and through, Solly March. Morgan Gibbs-White has coaxed a free kick out of Brighton here. Backward wants to take it quickly. Andy Madley didn't want that, wasn't happy that everyone was ready to go.
It's almost a carbon copy from a one-use chance just 5 minutes ago. Elliot Anderson stands over the ball and the free kick again, and another great chance for Forest.
Yeah, you're right, Luke. It's right of centre. It's Anderson. It's a deeper one this time. It's over the head of everybody, including Murillo, who was the intended target. He's able to keep it in play. He's got his back to the whole proceedings at the moment, with Veltman defending him. Veltman won it. Murillo pushed him over, and it's a Brighton free kick.
And that's the one there. Well, you've just got to recognise the state of the game, and Murillo, yes, he loves to have his little bit of flair, but at the end of the day he's a centre half right in front of the corner flag, and Luca Netz is just 10 yards away from him. He could just deliver the ball back to him, and then Forest have another opportunity to create a chance, and he just tries to do a bit of skill when the simple thing to do is almost the right thing, and he just gives away a free kick needlessly on Veltman and relieves the pressure on Brighton.
So mentioned Brighton have got Arsenal coming here on Wednesday, then they're off to Sunderland before their next visitors to the Amex after the Arsenal game during the week will be Liverpool. And for Nottingham Forest, and the Forest fans I'm sure will be picking apart the fixtures over the next couple of months to see where the points might be coming from. Manchester City away on Wednesday, then they've got that game against Midtjylland, the first leg of their round of 16 Europa League tie, and then Fulham are next to come to the City ground.
Well, there are no easy fixtures, are there, in the Premier League, especially now, between now and the end of the season, because everyone is playing for something, and that is not the case, and it ends up being in a straight shootout in a match where no one's really playing tactically. They just want to try and go and score goals and win the games, and that's what it's going to be between now and the end of the season for Nottingham Forest.
They've still got Tottenham Hotspur to play this month, and they've still got Burnley to face as well in April. Nottingham Forest amongst their fixtures. We are moving now towards the final minute of the 90, and Brighton, as they have done since the 15th minute of this game, 2-1 up against Nottingham Forest. Gomez and Welbeck with the Brighton goals, Gibbs-White, who very briefly have brought Nottingham Forest level.
Yeah, Brighton have handled the occasion much better than Nottingham Forest. They've controlled the tempo of the game, they've made the right decisions at the right time, they've defended brilliantly when they've needed to take the sting out of the game. Yes, there's been a few murmurings from their own fans, but they've really controlled it in such a professional way that they've never really looked in too much trouble for Forest. They've had the odd chance, but it's mostly been Brighton controlling the majority of that 90 minutes.
Solly March's name has been chanted again. He's just won a free kick for Brighton after Murillo fouled him, and that long ball forward from deep for Brighton from Van Hecke goes all the way through to Matt Sells. So this is it now for Nottingham Forest. This really is crunch pointed. They're going to get something out of this game as Jair Cunha with a high ball forward. Van Hecke marshalling the edge of his penalty area as he does so well. Clears it away. Collected by Elliot Anderson very neatly on the halfway line. Brought down by him. Murillo gives it to Gibbs-White. Back to Murillo again. Now out to that left-hand side for one of the Forest changes. Luca Netz, former Borussia Mönchengladbach player. How many minutes? 6 to be added on at the end of the 90. So Forest might be encouraged by that number going up on the board there. As Backward on the right wing for Forest, going from left to right. Can he produce the quality here that they now really do need? Backward, the Frenchman, going back towards Jair Cunha. Here's Anderson, 20 yards outside the Brighton penalty area. To the right wing again for Ndoye, who tries to move his way past Kadiolu, was too strong for him. It's a good bit of defending by Kadiolu. And a tap on his back from Pascal Gross to say, well done, that's excellent from you. Free kick to Brighton.
Absolutely brilliant defending from Kaliolu, and it's such an important time in the game. It looked like Dan Ndoye just knocked it past him down this near side along the 18-yard box and tried to get across him, but he does brilliant just to stay and use his body to get in front of him, take the ball off him and then get the foul.
Another Brighton change, Matoma off, De Kuyper on. Interesting that Yankuba Minte again has not come off the bench for Brighton today. He is not getting game time at the moment under Fabian Hürzeler for whatever reason that may be. And Brighton have a free kick which Verbruggen takes. They're leading Nottingham Forest by 2-1, and Forest, as it was at the start of play, if it stays as it is here, are going to end the weekend 2 points above the bottom three, which is ultimately where they were at the very start of the weekend, with West Ham losing to Liverpool yesterday, with Leeds getting beaten by Manchester City as Hinshelwood tries to get beyond Murillo in a one-on-one situation. Murillo gets there first, sends it back to Sells, but Hinshelwood's going to run after him, and Sells out of his penalty area sends a skewed ball forward. Anderson brought it down, and some of the Brighton fans thought that was a handball. That's not given, and then Ndoye is certainly fouled. Dunk has bumped him over. Free kick to Nottingham Forest, and a yellow card for Lewis Dunk as well.
I'm not sure what Lewis Dunk can do there. Dan Ndoye runs straight at him and kicks it about 30 yards round him to try and get it the other side, but Dunk has no intent of trying to stop him. He just can't because of the momentum of Dan Ndoye. But definite handball in terms of why Brighton are so animated about it, because right in front of the technical area of Forest, Anderson controls it then bounces up and hits his arm, and then you're thinking immediately that's a free kick to Brighton. But no, Forest now have another very similar free kick just a bit higher up for Anderson to deliver in behind that Brighton back four as they set up on the 18-yard box. 3
minutes into the 6 that have been added on here at the Amex. Forest are trailing Brighton by 2-1, but it's their free kick from the right hand side. Anderson curling towards the far post. It was attacked by Jaya Cunha, who's probably the tallest of the lot in there, picked up by Ndoye on the left, and Ndoye with the pullback tried to get it into an area, and Brighton just hurry it away out of play for a Forest throw on the left.
Yeah, brilliant play, and the thing for me, it's a quick free kick that's taken, and Belieber at that back post towers up, and coming on as a substitute, having that responsibility, brilliant defending.
High ball forward again from Sells. Van Hecker was having to deal with Awaniyi. Those two are having a real good scrap to try and get on the end of it. This is Luca Netz, now Murillo just inside the Brighton half. Final couple of minutes, Forest looking for what would be an enormous equaliser in their season. Here's Ndoye, Gibbs White shoots, scuffed his effort, still loose in the box. Jaya Cunha's there, his effort's blocked, backward through a crowd, and so Milinkovic was in there too, and he couldn't get the shot away. It's real carnage inside that Brighton penalty area. Out on the right hand side again, it comes to Anderson, given to Bakwa, back in by Anderson, half cleared away. Gibbs White centrally lobs it back in, and coolly from Veltman, what about that, on his chest back to goalkeeper Verbruggen.
And if that doesn't win you a game of football, and that defensive enthusiasm that Brighton have showed inside that last 30 seconds, bodies absolutely everywhere. Van Hecker again with a fantastic block on the 6-yard box. Players on the ground, Dunk volleying it clear, Hinshelwood back in there, and then the ball comes in whilst the carnage is ensuing. Veltman puffs his chest out on the 6-yard box and just chests it back into the hands of Verbruggen and takes the pressure away for Brighton. Brilliant.
Albion is ringing around the Amex Stadium from the home supporters, but their team are trying to do what they can to manage this game now. They've got no real intent, Brighton, to go and win it, and what they have got is a free kick that's been given away by Bakwa for a foul deep up inside Brighton's half, went into the back of De Kuyper. Brighton free kick, and we are moving into the final 60 seconds now of stoppage time.
Yeah, credit to Brighton there. They've really showed a togetherness and a real intent today to turn the tide, and the changes that have been made, there's 4 substitutions for Brighton, and again, I mentioned it earlier with Matoma, sprinted the whole length of the pitch to keep Forest out. De Kuyper wins his side a free kick near his own corner flag when he's come on playing left wing, and that's credit to him and his mentality. And the mentality of Brighton today, they've been absolutely spot on defensively.
And they're nearly there. They are nearly getting their second consecutive Premier League win. Here is Murillo, Forest can have one last say in this game. Last 30 seconds, but what's happened there? Backwork. Well, that is absolutely extraordinary. Forest have got the ball on the halfway line, and Andy Madley has seen a foul 25 yards away from that by backwork on Cadioli.
And we're just talking about the mentality and the discipline which Brighton have showed in abundance, and that there, backward, nowhere near the ball, he stood behind Cadioli, just wraps his arms around him, whether he's trying to create space or a block, he then drags him to the floor. And that's just not something that gets missed.
There's the full-time whistle. Back-to-back Premier League wins for Brighton for the first time since November, and all of a sudden Fabian Hürzeler's team might be thinking about European football again, but for Nottingham Forest, still no uplift under their latest new manager. 2 games in the Premier League, 2 defeats for Vitor Pereira, who shrugs his shoulders. Nottingham Forest have lost by 2 goals to 1 at Brighton, and they remain just 2 points above the Premier League's bottom 3. Luke Chambers.
And yeah, Forest didn't do enough today, and that's far and away. They had a brilliant start, really bright, and recovered well from going 1-0 down, but after that it was all Brighton, and the quality and the discipline and the game plan that they had was fantastic. They had numbers behind the ball when they needed to, they broke with intent and quality when they needed to, and the substitutions that were made really were able to keep that intensity that they started the game with, and the front foot nature that they approached the game, and almost getting back to a performance that we've been used to seeing from Brighton at home at the Amex.
So the goals all came in the first 15 minutes. Diego Gomez after 6 of them with a half volley right-footed shot into the bottom corner. An equally great goal for Morgan Gibbs-White after 13, shot from the edge of the box, flew into the top left-hand corner for Bruggen's goal. But that Forest hope immediately extinguished by what turned out to be the match winner from Danny Welbeck on the quarter of an hour mark. So just as it was last week for the Seagulls, Gomez and Welbeck on the score sheet in a Brighton win, and they have jumped up in the Premier League table. And I'm just going to see whether that game between Fulham and Spurs has finished, because that certainly affects where Brighton are going to be. It has. So Fulham have beaten Tottenham by 2 goals to 1 at Craven Cottage. So Brighton are up to 11th in the Premier League table on 37 points. So they are now 3 points, Luke Chambers, off Everton in 8th. It's funny how quickly the narrative of a team's season can change in this Premier League season.
And exactly that, and had they not won the other day at Brentford, you would think we're looking over our shoulders, but now this result, and again, it's not just the result, it's the performance today. Real control from Brighton, real quality. They looked a level above Forest over the 90 minutes, and it certainly showed that it is a team, if they can continue, and again, do they keep this consistency? Do they keep this 11 together? Because that's what they've probably been missing recently, and that's what they've been able to do, which has in turn given them a brilliant performance.
And of that current bottom 6, the only team that have got any positive result this weekend are Wolves, the bottom team, with their win over Aston Villa on Friday night. Burnley, West Ham, Spurs, Leeds, and here Nottingham Forest have all been beaten in the Premier League this weekend.